Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to our channel. The date is Sunday, the 14th of June 2026. This is our 240th Tawheed Tafseer Halaqah. We are on Surah Al-Ankabut. The ayah we are on, which I've just misplaced, is 48. Format will be Tafsir followed by question and answer, maybe a little bit brief, and then Palestine update. We'll wrap things up by 5 o'clock today. So we'll try to keep to some kind of timing, inshallah. So first ayah is 48 from Ankabut.
Yeah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
وما كنت تتلو من قبله من كتاب ولا تخطه بيمينك إذا لارتاب المبتلون. First translation for O Muhammad, in brackets, thou hast never been able to recite any divine writ. This one, as was one, and in brackets, was revealed, nor didst thou ever transcribe one with your own hand, or else they who try to disprove the truth of thy revelation, brackets, might indeed have cause to doubt it. Next translation. You never recited any book before we revealed this one to you, nor did you ever write one with your own hand. Otherwise, those who try to disprove the truth would have had cause for doubt.
Yeah. Okay, Bismillah. That's one of the well-established facts historically, and also the Quran enshrines that very clearly, that before revelation, until he received revelation, claimed to be a prophet, والسلام, he never read. Actually, translating Kitab here as a book is a bit slightly restricted, because people usually have in their mind a certain book or something, a writing. And the word Kitab could mean also just writing. You have never been able to read any writings whatsoever. Books, scrolls, parchments, contracts, whatever, sales contracts, nothing written or in whatever type of material. He was not able to read. He was completely illiterate in that sense, and he was not able to write anything of that. So he's completely illiterate in that sense. Also, a title is given him by the Quran, so the illiterate prophet we discussed that in Surah Al-A'raf, which could be having two meanings. In the case of Prophet ﷺ, he is illiterate in both meanings. One is this meaning here in this ayah, and the other one is in belonging to outside the people of the book, especially outside of the Jews, because the Quran says in some places, tell the people who got in the scripture and the Ummiyin, the Goyim, the nations. That's the way the Jews describe other nations, as Ummiyin, as Goyim, ethnos. In Greek, it's called ethnos, and the other nation, the other races. So from the other races, not from the race of the Israelites. And he's also, that fits to him. He's a Goyim in that sense. So he's Ummi in both sense. But the sense he has stressed that more important is, before that was revealed to you and he claimed prophethood, he was completely illiterate. No reading of any writing whatsoever, no ability to write anything, even one single letter. Some narration later have come to indicate he may have been able to read and write later. There's no contradiction, because that he is being illiterate, as a matter of fact, not able to read and write in a narrow sense, is a deficiency usually. Someone who's literate and knowledgeable is obviously superior generally. Indeed, it is for everyone. For Muhammad, it was done, as Quran said, we did that to arrange it such a way so that anyone could not have any doubt that you may have learned or studied previous scripture and come for them understanding, because the Quran wrote many old stories, obviously modified and corrected, and many things which only literary people with literal capacity is not. You meet someone on the street and they tell you a story and then you phrase it. It doesn't work this way. It may work for one episode or a few ayahs, but it cannot work for the full of the Quran. Especially the Makki Quran is full of story, narration of previous nations, etc., which someone must be well scholarly, equipped for years, possibly decades of his life before that, before he can come forward with something similar to the Quran in its totality, but also in every surah of it, because the challenge has come obviously in that direction. But until he announced that, and the procedure started 3 years after the announcement that he's the prophet, and addressed the Quraysh and confronted them, that was clear that he has never, and was known to everyone, for his family, people around him, people who did with him business. They knew that they have to write for him, and they have to read to him, definitely. So this is a settled fact, and the Quran enshrined it also in itself, also for the posterity, because if that's not true, the Quraysh will jump on his neck and tear him apart. That's very clear. So this is an absolutely established fact. And also one, let's say indirect evidences of prophethood, because an imposter, a deliberate one, obviously, not one who is subconsciously overtaken, mentally deranged, because some people say, oh yeah, he brought that Quran, but because he's subconscious and he's mentally deranged. That can be excluded in many other counts, many other reasons. The others say that he's deliberately fabricating and lying, and that can be excluded in many grounds. One of them, that he mentioned things in the Quran which will backfire against him immediately if they're not true. So an imposter will not do that. He will be more intelligent than that. Definitely. So this points strongly to the divine origin, this miraculous aspect. And the Quran says clearly, otherwise the people of falsehood would start doubting and bringing some question of doubt. And also the Orientalists tried to say, oh, he was educated by a man called Bahir al-Rahib, because there was an episode in the Seerah mentioned that he as a child was going with his uncle to Sham in a business trip, and Bahir also him said it's a prophet, protect him, and so on. It's obviously absurd, because Bahir is never mentioned anywhere in it was just one episode by passing there. You can't be educated of all these stories of Bani Israel and so on from one trip in which you pass there. Let's say you stayed there a couple of days, maybe 1 week or something like his uncle. But the story itself is not well established, most likely imaginary fabrication. It's Bahir al-Rahib. And the other one, there was someone who Malik ibn Habib. Nobody knows who is this Malik ibn Habib. Some people, it's the real name of Musaylim al-Kadhab. But Musaylim is not far away. Has nothing to do with Mecca. And the Prophet was well established that he never went to Mecca. Actually, he never went much south of Mecca toward Yemen. He never put foot there. All his trips for business were a few trips to Sham, to the north. So there's no record whatsoever that he was much south of Mecca, all the way to Aden or to Abyssinia. Never set foot there. The only places he lived in is Mecca, Taif, obviously, which is the summer city of Mecca, and then the villages around that, possibly around Hajj areas, and then going all the way towards Medina. And all his life, the rest life was in Medina, except the battle campaigns outside, and none of them was sufficiently far to the east and so on, and to the north all the way to Tabuk. That was the maximum he reached after becoming a prophet. Before that, maybe a couple of times almost in the outskirts of Damascus for business travel, in Busra. That's still and that's the market of Damascus, marketplace where caravans meet from Palestine and Egypt, from Iraq, from Arabia, and from the north of Syria and Anatolia. At the time, there were no Turkey and no Turks there. Were all of them really Greek and their cousins of other nations. So that's the only places he went. He was never in Egypt. He was never in Iraq. Never anywhere else. He's just a local man in those areas. So who is this Malik ibn Habib? What he was doing? Is he a bishop? What is? It's not clear, this story. Maybe someone of Shab will go to artificial intelligence, say, who was the Malik ibn Habib? Who some Orientalists alleged that he was the educator of Muhammad, and see whatever they say, whatever the references they have. Most likely it's just maybe some episode in some seerah about meeting a scholar called Malik ibn Habib and having a dialogue with him or something like that. And most likely that's fabricated, because there's nowhere in any of the first. Ibn Ishaq mentioned many meetings. For a meeting with someone from Oman. His name is not coming to my mind at the moment. And he offered and said, I hear that you are bringing a message, and so on. I have also scripture. Say, what's it say, sir? The scroll of Luca. It's not obviously the Gospel of Luke. Something, a collection of advice. We have no idea where it is. It's extinct. And he read it to the Prophet and said, this is good advising and so on. But I have something much better. The man said, yeah, read to me, show me what you have. So I have it in memory. And he read, I think, one of the surah of the Hameems, which we passed on, they will come. And then after he finished, it's a small, relatively short surah, a few pages. And then he stopped, said, this is what Habib read to me. He said, repeat that again. Then he repeated and said, your words, I have good words, good advice, most likely from old scripture, Jewish or Christian scripture, called Luca. There's Luke, maybe Luke, something like that. Must be a Christian early scripture, which is lost. An apocrypha, not the Gospel of Luke. And he said, stop here. Your words have reached the bottom of the ocean. Nothing can go deeper and more significant. Give you my hand, so I give you bay'ah to carry da'wah of Islam, embrace Islam. So that's such episode. I'll mention the in the seerah many times. Yeah, and the Quran referred to some of them. Like also the issue with the Jews, they asked the Quraysh, say, give us something we can embarrass Muhammad, put him in the corner, and they gave him the 3 questions. Possibly one of them was present in Mecca also. And he answered them after 15 days until he was really stuck. And then the Quran came with the answer about the cave, etc. and the Qarnayn. And then shaded him that he said, I'll give you the answer tomorrow. And the Quran says clearly, don't say to anything, I'm doing it tomorrow. Illa an yasha Allah. Make the exception so that everyone knows that future is under absolute control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You cannot say, I will give it to you tomorrow, as if you are certain that you will be alive and you will be able to do it. Make it, inshallah. Give me some time, inshallah. So, many episodes like that also testified by the Quran. So, this nonsense of someone educating him, especially before prophethood, is utterly nonsensical. And by the way, Waraq ibn Nawfal, and he remained alive after the Prophet, actually he made longer. People usually quote the hadith of Aisha. Aisha, give a summary, say Waraq testified that he's a prophet, and then said, and soon, what is the word soon means? Sometimes soon means years for the Arabs. And soon thereafter, Waraq died, and the wahi cooled down, something like that. Obviously, this is nonsensical because we have other evidences and multiple narration that Waraq was available and alive until the torture began. And he was passing on Bilal and say, you will torture him until you kill him. Even if you kill him, I will make a shrine on him. Something like that. So this is also narrated with good isnads in the seerah. So there's 4 years Waraq there. Nobody say, oh, he learned from Waraq, because the people know very well that Waraq was like a monk, isolated. And although he is from the family of Khadija, sallallahu alayha, the wife of the Prophet, but obviously they have not very much interaction. It's not a direct brother or cousin. It's a bit far away. So there were maybe barely any social interaction. Actually, seemed to be none. The way Khadija went to him, because he is the knowledgeable man in Bani Zuhra. That's all. And because of the relation and close family relation, relatively, from the same branch of Quraysh, she went to him. She knows nobody else. It seems to be also there's nobody else in Quraysh who seems to be known for reading and following the old scripture and may know about prophethood and angels and things like that. When the Prophet comes shivering of fear from the cave of Hira. So she went there to consult him. And he already, when he heard what he said, so this is the spirit which usually comes to the prophets. He essentially meaning they went to Daniel, because Daniel was getting Jibreel also usually in a terrifying form. Just a small side note. I once read from some Coptic Christian in Egypt, and he said, look, how gentle the angels spoke to Maryam and so on, you have been elected and so on, and how harsh Muhammad was addressed by them. That must be some kind of a devil. So these people do not read their own scripture. Daniel describes every meeting with Gabriel. Gabriel come in a terrifying way. And sometimes Daniel falls on his face almost conscious, losing conscious. And then he wakes up and Jibreel. And one time he does Jibreel as a man with eyes radiating fire. That's not a nice way. That's the way of Jibreel enforces things from the people, so they go deep in their memory and structure. Maryam is prepared to be the mother, as a woman. The divine treatment is a gentle, a caring treatment. It's not to be sent to the people. But she doesn't need to be hardened. She needs to be softened, educated in patience and so on. So, but if someone has sold his brain to others, you have no hope with it. Until you get your brain in its place and start using it, you will be in trouble. So, back to that. So, this is an important point. But that does not exclude, there's in some narrations, especially later in Medina, that he was able to see what's written and erase it. And like, for example, the story of Hudaybiyah, when he was dictating the final agreement, هذا ما عهد عليه محمد رسول الله. He said, this is the agreement between Muhammad, the messenger of God, and the other side says, stop. If we recognize you as a messenger, he's similar to Trump, this guy. Later, he became a reasonably good Muslim, not the other Quraysh, but this one. Said, if we recognize the messenger of God, we would not fight you. Stop you coming from Kitab. Put your name and the name of your father and your tribe or other designation, like the chief of Medina or anything like that, or the head of the Medina army, but not messenger of God. It was not agreed upon. Otherwise, we acknowledge that we put our signature on that. So he ordered to be erased. Allegedly, it seems to be good isnad. Ali refused, say, I'm not going to erase you. So he said, show me where it is, and this here, and then he erased it with his stamp. Because at that time they were writing on parchment, and then you can erase until it's kept in the sun, until it dried. It's very easy to erase and penetrate in the skin. So he erased it and continued. And say, other narrations which that he may have read something or something, or he could recognize some words or some letters, and also the issue that they were combining the Quran under his supervision, and some issues with the Quran in the writing. That's, for example, the old writing was devoid of the dots of the letters, not the tashkil, not the what they call the orthographic signs. No. That for example, ha, kha, jim, they differ by dots. But that's what the English say, the crossing the T and dotting the I is dots. In English, only I think, and J, even the small ones are dotted. The other ones are not dotted. So if you omit the dotting in English, you can read easily. Well, we are used in the printing press. It's easy to produce it with dots. But in time past, when people write, they may skip a dot sometimes out of convenience. But definitely the dots are in the original writing of the language since even the time of the Romans. The Quran is completely devoid of any dotting, initial writing. Obviously, the more recent writing, the later writing, usually according to certain reading variants and certain narrative variants, they are dotted properly, but they even more orthographic signs and tashkil, e, and so on, the short vowels, not the long vowels, the short vowels, and so on. So it was devoid. And this is because obviously clearly the prophet, whatever he's an imposter, he's mentally deranged, he's a true prophet, must take great care of writing everything clearly with dots. So avoiding dots, Apostle here directed them to avoid dots because they would write in the natural way with dots. Remove this, remove this, remove this. So he at least he can recognize the writing and do something. So you can conclude later on he came to know, at least visually recognizing a few things and order them to be erased. For example, that's like a rational conclusion, not necessarily, but which then will bring the following exceptionally difficult problem to solve, which is the following. How come that a book which is obviously he was caring for it completely, half of his work and was focused on the Quran, it's writing, checking it once a year in Ramadan, and the final double check in the last Ramadan. That's well established. Nobody denies that. Neither Orientals nor anybody else. And the narration are overwhelmingly corroborating with themselves. And the editing is continuously. The moment the surah is completed, she's taken out, re-edited, and It was not even in a codex in a book form. It was most likely sheets connected together with a thread or something like lawyers used to do. There were no ring binder at the time yet. Only recent. Actually, lawyers are using this thread until now to have it easy without using ring binder. Ring binder used usually for the final storage or submission to the court. So how to explain? If he's mentally drained, he would follow what the scribes, the technical scribes are doing, and they must have the dots, because there's a very important writing, which must be read correctly. If he's an imposter, he will take care that it will be dot. So this is a dilemma. You say, oh, no, there's no dilemma. That's why, again, the Orientalists are just giving us a background. In time past, obviously nobody dares saying that nowadays. It's shameful. It's a scandalous statement. That the Arabic language did not have the dots yet. So imagine a language and a writing system which has no dots whatsoever at the time. The dots were invented later, 70 years and so on. And they use some questionable, I should say, the first one to dot the Quran in Aqat al-Masahib is so and so and so and so on. Someone in the year 70, 80 Hijri, something like almost the beginning of the 8th century, which is a fallacy, because the dotting at the time must have been almost surely meaning tashkil, because it is called dotting because the Jews do not have any dots for the letters. Their post-Babylonic exile writing is free of dots. It's all like Kufi, like square, the square writing, not the ancient, the Paleo Hebrew, no, the current Hebrew from the Babylonic exile. It has no dots. So their tashkil, short vowels, A, U, E, is indicated by dots in top and below, not like us with dashes and slashes and hats and so on. So that's most likely what is meant if these narrations are valid at all. So they got trapped themselves in that. That Arabic language has the dots well before Islam. The writing is now well established. And we have found, archaeologists have found documents from the time of Umar at least, and some ancient documents, but from the time of Umar, we have, and luckily it's inscribed. One of it is a rock inscription in which someone praises Abu Bakr and asks for him for forgiveness that he passed away, and then praises Umar and pray for his long life, meaning it has been written in the time of Umar, and I think he writes a surah or something like that. I don't remember what it. I have a picture of it in my papers anyway. And quite a number of letters are there dotted. And imagine this is done while you are working on a rock, on a hard rock. But also there's a parchment, which one side is written in Greek and one in Arabic, all Hijaz script. The Arabic is partly dotted, obviously, as I said, where confusion may arise, it is dotted, some of the letters. In other places, he skips it. So the people were liberal in that, relying on the reader will understand. And the other side is that the Greek translation of that, and this was a covenant between none of the commanders of the army who conquered Egypt at the time. So one of the sub-commanders was Amr ibn al-As, in which he borrows horses and things from village chieftain, village mayor, and make a covenant to him to get it next year, the same horses if they, but if they expire or if they cannot bring them, then they will deduce the price, the fair value price, fair market price from the next jizya. So they will have less jizya next year. So like a loan on the next to be paid back by deducting it from the jizya for next year, under covenant and the signature and the name of the mayor in Greek. Greek was the common language for the Eastern Roman Empire, in which all documents are written, because their main language was not only literary language Greek like Rome, but also administrative language. Latin was confined to Italy, to Spain, to France, and so on, and was the administrative language of the Romans. Basic documents and so on are usually in Latin, but literary and history and philosophy is in Greek. That's for Rome. In the Eastern Empire, everything is Greek. Everything is Greek. Official language and literary language and Bibles, obviously, and so on. So that parchment is available and well known to, because it has its own date in it. And I don't think anyone ever thought there's any necessity to carbon dating it, but it could be carbon dated if anyone does. Now, recently, in the recent few months and years, another inscription was found on a rock in Al-Ula, that's deep in Arabia. This was in Egypt. And the other inscription for Umar, I don't know where it is, as I mentioned. I will check where it came from and tell you, inshallah, in the future. One recently between Medina and Palestine or Jordan, so midway, at Madain Salih, the cities of Salih, Al-Hijr, just in that area, or north of it, on a rock, a guy called Zuhair, who is the Mawla, the freed slave of a certain lady, he mentioned that. And he said, وكتبه Zuhair wrote it in the time when obviously he received just the news now that Omar was killed. Either he used the word because it's not clear there, you could read it as killed, or you could use it as struck with a knife in his belly, something that could be one of two words, depending upon one letter which is not clearly hammered nicely. In the year, obviously in the beginning, in the year 24 Hijri. This caused a bit of discussion about how come, because Umar was assassinated late in 23 after coming from Hajj and so on. And I did some work with some Shabab recently about that. It turns out that it could be very well the usual story that he died like for a few days remaining from the Hijjah. Most likely maybe a confusion of one narrator. But there's two versions. One narrator say he was attacked. That was on a Wednesday. We know it's a Wednesday. For all narrations say on a Wednesday. After that Jum'ah, he announced that he saw a cock picking him 3 times and say, someone will attack me 3 times with a knife or a sword or something like that. And it was fulfilled after that. That was a Jum'ah ceremony. We know that with certainty, with so many narrations. And say that attack was on Wednesday with 27 of the Hijjah or 28 or something like that, 3-4 days remaining. And one other narrator, they were discussing with Al-Waqidi told him that it's according to my calculation. Say, I think you are mistaken. It doesn't say it was attacked at that day and died, and before he died. The attack was earlier or after, something like that. Yeah, something like that. So there's a confusion of few days. 2-3 days, then you are in Muharram in the year 24. So the inscription synchronizes with the historic facts, and this man is about minimum 6 travel days from Medina. That means the distance of about, after Al-Ula, 500, 600 kilometers, and people doing business, attending to the catastrophe of attacking Umar, and they continue their travel, maybe a business caravan. Maybe they delayed a couple of days to see what's going on. And then when they joined there, obviously people say, any news? In time past, the business source are these coming in business. They brought great bad news. Umar has been assassinated or something like that. And this guy asked him when, and so on, and he covered back. And he thought it must be early 24. And this is more seriously taken because he's a president. He was not in Medina, but he's present at the same time. So scarcely possible that he will make a mistake. So who knows that? 2 weeks ago, he counts on his finger and he will estimate what's the time gone, and they put it in 24, which is only 4 or 5 days later than what the usual narration is, which is okay. So this is more serious taken than what you hear everywhere, that he died or was attacked just for 4 days remaining for it. And Uthman was elected the first day of Muharram or the last day of the Hijjah or something like that. As a matter of fact, from this, it seems to be. And this fits well also with a narration from Sha'bi that they met for a sun after Salat al-Asr, that's the 3rd day after the death of Umar. And he said this was the 4th or something of Muharram. Again, Sha'bi is much later. Is not a president at that time. He was not yet born. So he's relying on people reporting to him. And they can make a mistake a few days also, depending upon their area and visibility of the moon and many other things. So Uthman was given bay'ah on the 3rd or 4th of Muharram, according to Ash-Sha'bi. Maybe the people are mistaken a few days, so the assassination was 1st of Muharram. So the discrepancy in the date, 24 Hijri, And usually assumed last few days of 23 is irrelevant. It's just few days for people who do not keep exact records like we're keeping now, and they do not have really exact birth registers at that time, at least. But this that's not interesting. I'm just mentioning that casually. So it is really confirming that it's around the end of the year 23 and the beginning of 24. Give and take few days here, few days there. That's not very relevant in fixing the time appropriately. And we know that ancient tradition, like especially Waqidi, tried to synchronize old calendars. Waqidi is born 150 years later and died 206 or something, Hijri. So he relies on narrations, and there are conflicting calendars and calculation methods. So he has to calculate back, and this is not very reliable. And we know for a fact quite a number of his calculations are definitely and manifestly wrong. For example, he calculates the assassination of Barwiz, the son of Hormuz, by his son, in the famous hadith of the basic Islam of Al-Yaman, etc. He calculated to be somewhere in the 7th year, something in Jumada al-Ula. He gives the date and the Fajr and so on. Obviously, he missed the date, because we know from Roman documents, now we have Roman documents, and from inscription on coins and so on, with certitude that it was not, it was actually in Shawwal the year before, 6th year. So he could make a mistake even these things up to 7 months. The same apply with the day of the death of Ibrahim, the son of Prophet, where we have the solar eclipse. Also, Al-Waqti gets a certain date. I don't remember it at the moment. I have it in some of my papers. And we know there was no eclipse as described, which almost, it was not a total eclipse. In Mecca, it was total, but in Medina, it was almost total. I think 87% of the disk of the sun was covered. So the stars could be visible. And this is at the moment of sunrise. That's the only one recorded, and it is synchronized with the day Ibrahim alayhi salam died. And we can go to the tables of eclipses and so on. They're very accurate, calculated with the lunar theory of level 2 approximation. And we know all these historically for 1,000 years back, and we know for 1,000 years forward. And if you do the calculation, or actually look at the list in what's the name? In NASA, and the NASA, they have a site which give you that. Just specify the Mecca, either the name of the city or the coordinates, and it will tell you which eclipses were there. And the only one in the time was in Medina, and even 10 years after that, before that, is the only one. It was sometimes in January or certain years, is equivalent to the last day of Shawwal in the 10th year. Well, Waqidi calculates another day. So mistakes like that for a few days, it can be even longer than that. Can happen. So just discount these narrations unless it's corroborated by a national event like a solar or lunar eclipse and so on. The same eclipse in Mecca was completely total. So that's what the line of eclipse. So Medina was off the line a little bit, but Mecca was on the line, complete eclipse. So that's just a comment. Now, the most important for us now is that this inscription, the rock, is in the year 24, quite early in it. Definitely early in it. The moment the guy received that, he seems to have a hobby, because there's another inscription of him, he introduced himself, and who is the master lady, Mawla, so and so on. So he have a hobby of inscription on rocks. Two have been found, maybe others will be found, and he mentioned his name. It's not narcissism, but some people would like to keep themselves and their names for, like, so and so on was here one time, or in that date. We find many things like that, or rocks in Arabia and elsewhere in the world. You find it in Europe in certain places, you find it in America. So quite a number of letters which with dots which should have dots are dotted, and some are not dotted. So again, depending his judgment, is this place could be confusing? Let me hammer the dot. It's not confusing, don't put it. Like, for example, you check out Umar ibn Khattab, the ba doesn't have the dot below it. and other place like that. So mix. The same like this one old one, which I said, which had been found many years back. And there's another one found near Medina, to the southeast of Medina, near the area of Mahd al-Zahab, which is or seemed to be from that time. They claim it's from that. We're scanning that, studying with the Shabab about that to see obviously the date. It has also dotted and non-dotted, but because the picture, it's like a curved rock, the picture is only taken from the front, so the side is not clear. So we'll contact the archaeological authority of Saudi Arabia, that's in Saudi Arabia, obviously, to see if they can take other pictures and have it more and better resolution. So we can conclude these things. Most likely this picture which being distributed now is just to announce the news. I think they have taken picture from various. I don't think they would, archaeologists from the King Saudi University in Riyadh will neglect such triviality, and also the place, the exact place, the coordinates are not given, which is not important, but it's important to know the area and so on. So we'll check that. So definitely dotting of the letters must have been available at the time of Umar or before and so on. And there's no way that the script have developed in that short time. So it must be even with the Qurayshi, like 10, 20, 50, 100 years before Islam. Anyway, so this will put the question now, how to explain that? Who did it and why? The case of Muhammad, you get stuck. There's no reason for him to, except to write as accurately and as clear so nobody can make a mistake. If it is from God, yeah, this has a deeper sense. And we discussed that at the beginning of the text. Remember, we are now almost 5 years along the way. Yeah, we almost completed 5 years now, Halakat Tafseer. Yeah, almost. I think soon we'll complete 5, or we have completed. At the beginning, we discussed these things casually. So this is one aspect which is related to the writing. But that's the issue of writing. So this is one of the, it is a deficiency for every human being, except for the Prophet. It is because it's from miraculous aspects. So he was deprived from being educated. That's the complete opposite to Isa ibn Maryam. Because Isa was born fully literate. He was educated in the womb. Obviously, according to the Quran. Even the Christian don't have that. In the narration. With the narration of the birth story in Bethlehem and so on, going to Egypt is a fabrication. That's almost agreed on by all scholars. And both versions, the one in Matthew and the one in Luke, most likely all of them. And the genealogies are fabricated. They don't exist. All of this is nonsense. And the issue of the census is absurd. All of this has been fleshed out, I think, and nobody of serious scholarship denies that. But here we have the only source we have is the Quran and the Maryam, and Surah Maryam. What happened when she was met the angel who blew the spirit on her and so on. And then in the birth, he spoke to her and instructed her, meaning he's fully instructed. And obviously he's fully educated, fully aware. Possibly have other languages already educated. This is plus. But for Muhammad and he's sent to a learned society. Yeah, actually, an overlaid, a crusted, over-sophisticated society with many points of view and philosophical hanging around and so on, and counter-arguments and hair splitting, especially Jewish style hair splitting, and digging deep where it should not be dug, and leaving to dig deep where it must be dug, and all of these things. We know that. But they were peak of their civilization. So a messenger must be on top of them, superior to them in the scholarship and so on. And the time of medical sciences and advancement and so on, so relative to previous nations and so on. So he must be one who brings medical-like miracles, healing the blind, etc. things. Anyway, that's all relatively speculative, but it makes good sense. For Muhammad is the opposite, because he brings something with superior in scholarship aspect, in a shocking level, with completely illiterate background in a place which is not in the bottom of the world on scholarship, but near to the bottom of the world. There's no way Quraysh and Mecca could be even compared to the scholarship and the level of sophistication even in Sana'a and Yemen, let alone in Syria and Sham and so on, or under the Persian Empire. Forget about that. That's impossible. It's really a big gap in civilization. Consider a big gap. Yeah, Quraysh and so is more civilized and educated than Najd, for example, and the Camel boys and so on. Najd, these are very rough, backward guys, but they are not much far above. No comparison with them. So that's an miracle. So you were not before that able to read any writings or write anything. Otherwise, why did we arrange it this way? Otherwise, the people of Palestine and Mubtilun will be in doubt, and they can bring some kind of doubts. And you know how powerful this argument by itself. Even in modern discussion, it's very powerful. There's no way to escape from it. There's no way to escape from it. On the issue of dotting, add insult to injury to the Orientalists. The explanation has been destroyed completely by this archaeological finds. They say when you establish this so-called hypercritical school of history, we need a piece of bone, we need the inscription, we need a remainder of a palace or building, otherwise we will not believe. Okay, here you have it. Writing with dots. Not everywhere, but a good amount. And we can understand why, especially if you're writing on rocks, you would save as much as possible of the hard work. And dots are very difficult to get out. Unless you have a special chisel with a rounded head, you use the usual chisel, you have to go sidewise and dig in it several times. It's much messier. Putting a line is easier. So they put dots as needed only. Or the writer think it's needed, like this Zuhair in this one. And the old one, I will check that old one which I have. It's several decades available now, I think, about 40, 50 years. And the new one, which was found near Mahd al-Dhahab, southeast of Medina, about 100 plus kilometers far away from Medina, which mentioned Umar ibn Khattab in his time. We have to double check and see. But we have seen dots there. But we would like to have really much sharper and a picture. So this is the theory that Arabic was not dotted yet. The Arab was so backward, especially Quraysh, that there was no dotting whatsoever, and was invented later. It's just nonsense. That was the way they tried to explain that initial writing of the Quran with the Hijaz script is devoid of dots. That's all destroyed completely, annihilated. Okay, so that's an important part of it. Another part is obviously the title Ummi for the Messenger of Allah is not only the illiterate, it's the one belonging to the other nations, to the Goyims, to the ethnos. Okay, next ayah.
بل هو آيات بينات في صدور الذين أوتوا العلم وما يجحد بآياتنا إلا الظالمون. Nay, but this divine writ consists of messages clear to the hearts of all who are gifted with innate knowledge, and none could knowingly reject our messages unless it be such as would do wrong to themselves. Next translation.
Next translation.
Ja, das ist gut translate. Rather, the Quran is a clear message to the hearts of those who have been given knowledge. No one knowingly rejects our verses except those who are unjust to themselves.
Yeah, it's more accurate to say in the chest. So, as we said, chest, the metaphorical chest is the place of information, and not the heart. It's the chest, and the chest contains the heart, the center of thinking, feeling, and so on. But the chest is a metaphor for the memory, the database, and the heart is the CPU. So if you take the metaphor or the example of the computer, so it is there in their chest, and it was given to the Prophet in his chest, but it was given also in writing, by the way, where we did not stress that at the beginning. But in our final writing about the recording of the Quran, we said the Quran is primarily a writ, a rasm, and secondarily a reading. And the rasm is devoid. That's the argument. Axiomatically, assuming it's a divine, by the divine order devoid of these dots. Obviously, the Prophet had that is one of the readings, and this we may call it the master reading. But there are other sub readings which are possible with various dots. And then we can deduct from necessity of reason and the language certain rules about that. But the master reading is that what he pronounced, and most readers are reading it. So the so-called 7 readings now are essentially this master reading, maybe with some variations on the dotting, yes, but we know almost with certitude what is the master reading. The differences between the current readings, like Warsh and so on, is in counts of a few things like that, which is a secondary, essentially. And secondly, they are in, they reflect some of the dotting differences in certain places in the Quran. And the master one, we can extract it from the various channels of narration, because we have 7 main channels and then through three extras and more other extras. If the majority agree against Hafs, for example, we know the master reading must have that. So it was given pronunciation in the master reading, and in the writing he was instructed, tell them to remove that, remove that, remove that. So we have this, which is making the miracle. But it is as a master reading in the chests, in the memory of those who have got a knowledge. They memorize it also, but it's written. We know it is written. We know there's one Masahif time, brothers. We discussed at the beginning the fallacy about that Uthman, the first one collected from parchment. So this is utter nonsense. That's also refuted by many other hadith also, the Mus'haf of Hafsa and so on. But this is the issue of decoding the Quran. Inshallah, if Allah give us life and we go back to Tafseer, like the second 2.0 version, if ever, then the introduction will be much longer and we'll cover the recordation of the Quran in a more exacting way. Maybe you'll just go to the recordation of the Quran. So that's it. So the reason for all of this, the hardship to the Prophet that he was made and kept away from writing and so on, so that he has this unique miracle for himself. In contradistinction to various prophets. Most previous prophets, as in the Old Testament, are people who can read and write. Even Musa, according to their narration, beside the tablets which are written by the divine finger, he was dictated plenty of things from Mount Sinai, allegedly, and he wrote them down by himself. So he's a writer. He's educated. He's almost a royal in Egypt in ancient times. And all the verse after that, all of them have their own scribes, and they themselves can write and dictate. Not Muhammad ﷺ, just the opposite, with a stunning book superior to theirs. So square the circle, show us how this is possible from an illiterate man in Arabia. That's a very important miracle. So he was this perfection, he was deprived of the perfection. Another perfection, let me mention it casually, which many people did not understand the time past, the ability to put rhyme and the rhyme and the rhythm of poetry is definitely an extra perfection ability. No doubt that a literary man who can write only prosa is a matter of eloquence and ability to compose inferior, only in composition and so on, to someone who is able to do it in poetry form, in form which is having a rhythm and a rhyme. And this requires, at the same time, the people of rhythm and rhyme, they usually have a musical ear, yeah, and musical taste and rhyme taste. And this is a good aspect and characteristic. Evidence for that is that Dawood has one of the best voices, and he was using the kinnur. The kinnur is some kind of a guitar, or like the oud, like the Arabic oud with 4 double strings, 8 strings, or 6 double strings. And he was a master in that, to the level that he was even supported miraculously by the mountain, the bird. They were echoing his deliberately, not like the normal echo. No. Even the birds were echoing and singing to his songs. So this is a special feature, a perfection. For the Prophet ﷺ, to make the Quran even more miraculous in the matter of composition and the matter of musicality, because the Quran is very musical, has internal rhythm. In a unique type, not like poetry, nor like a prosa. It's not a straight prosa, not a poetry. And the people of music and so on know that until now. And some musician converted in Egypt, Coptic, converted to Islam because of the music of the Quran. Just hearing the humming from far away, one person goes say, This is some certain maqamat, certain scales, or they call it tacts. This is not the three quarter, nor it is the 7/8, no, there's some another tact. And then upon that, then he said, no, this is, it cannot be. To make that even stronger, the Prophet has been deprived from musical ear. He doesn't like hearing music, which most people have misunderstood that that music is prohibited or bad. Is not true. That's not the way. That's this. And when we know that from the hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar, when he said, I was with the Messenger of Allah, obviously Abdullah ibn Umar, they didn't understand it also either. I was with him, and then we passed in Medina, just in Medina, maybe in the outskirts of Medina itself, and there was a shepherd who was playing the flute. And when he heard it, he did not like it. And he tried to move away from it and asked me, listen to him. Do you still hear him? Yes. We continued until he said, no, he's so far away, I can't see him. Then he was relaxing. So he hated the sound of flute. Everyone else enjoyed the sound of flute. So he's deprived from this acoustic taste for music. But also in speech. For example, one time he quoted Labid al-Amiri in a poetry which said, "Ala kullu shay'in ma khala Allah batilun wa kullu na'imin la mahalata za'ilu." Everything except Allah is vain, is going, and every pleasure will necessarily go away. So in the second time, the line is nicely the same rhythm. He broke it and said, وباطل كل نعيم. So بقت المسجد الله يصير كل نعيم مع باطل أو زائل or something, and his face showed that he's not like the rhythm. And then Abu Bakr noticed that, sir. Allah is telling us the truth. We did not educate him to be a poet, and it is not befitting for him to be a poet. Deliberately to make the Quran extinct and separate from Muhammad. He cannot utter it subconsciously nor consciously. Yeah. So all these hocus pocus about he was running away from it's not an argument. You see how it works. Because if that would mean what the shepherd is doing haram or dislike, he would go and advise him, not run away. That's very obvious. But we are dealing, unfortunately, with many of the Salafis and the so-called Hanbali. We are dealing with people who chose to take their brains out and put them out and think according to what other people instruct them to think, if they ever think, and you just follow blindly. It can't. Ishuf tahrim wa haram. He did not like it. Why? If it would have been haram or disliked, he would have missed his prophetic duty to go and advise them and to stop or to reduce or to be low voice and so on. He did not. Even did not. He just ran away from him and said, go to him to advise him. So, and this issue with poetry, Abu Bakr recognized it, because Abu Bakr repeated once more, and the Messenger of Allah did not like it. He showed a face with someone. It doesn't sound good for me. It doesn't sound good. And Abu Bakr woke up, said, "Oh, Allah is telling us the truth. I have missed the point." For him, the rhythm of the poetry is offensive, contradicting to all humans. So this is a deficiency. But in the case of Prophet was dictated by necessity to fulfill and exclude any way anyone say, "Oh, he's a distinguished poet." So no wonder he can frame such a language which is and invent a new style which is neither prose nor poetry. No, it's not possible. وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له. So that's another example of something which is usually a good and nice aspect for someone else, even a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so highly desirable, like Dawood. Allah tell the mountains, respond to him, sing with him. Tell that the people will say, music and haram. But we'll finish all of that, inshallah. This is not one of our priority. I don't want to get indulged in these petty issues. But since these petty questions are coming again and again and again and again, and the writing is there and there and there and there, we'll inshallah finish them soon. But it's still a low priority. So don't ask me, where is the music? The writing. No, wait for it to come at leisure. So that's it. So it's from the same vein to enshrine and enforce fully and strictly that this is and this man is the messenger, communicator on the behalf of the divine. He is not an educated man, a philosopher, well-educated man. He is coming from zero level of scholarship, and he is a matter of formulating. Yes, he's very eloquent in prosa, in the usual language, but if it comes to rhythm and rhyme, like the Quran or like poetry, he is deficient. So take rid of that. So next ayah.
وقالوا لولا أنزل عليه آيات من ربه قل إنما الآية عند الله وإنما أنا نذير مبين. And yet when they said, why have no miraculous signs ever been bestowed upon him from on high by his sustainer? Say, miracles are in the power of God alone, and as for me, I am but a plain warner.
Yeah.
Next translation. But they say, why have no miracles been sent down to him from his Lord? Say, the miracles are only with God, and I am only sent to give you a clear warning.
Yeah. And this is actually, essentially, all the prophets are on this path, essentially. For example, Isa is only called in the Gospels, with the Jews asking for miracles and so on. Every time they ask, he refuses. And he does it spontaneously as it comes. And they have to see either be present accidentally or it's not by demand. You will not get any miracle by demand. And so if someone say, oh, different, so Isa was doing it. No. But none are on demand. Give us an evidence. The evidence you have seen. You have heard about the people who are blind in the case of Isa and woke up and stood up, or the people who are handicapped and they stood up and went, especially the one blind from birth. But the miracle is not becoming seeing. Someone said maybe some kind of a disease of the front part of the eye, the matter is gone. No, the problem is if you are blind from birth, you have no concept about space, no detailed concept. You may know about space by touching and go forward, backward, and you know that you are something like a cube, and you can extend it in your mind and so on. But you would not be able to get up, run quickly to your parents and find your house as if you have been going this way thousands of times. That needs training. And we have an example in the 30s. There was a disease. I think it's a genetic or something like that. People were born blind in America and everywhere in the world. And then a surgery was invented, which removed this. It was actually something like a complete seal, like a cataract, an extreme cataract by birth. And there's no way to deal with it until a proper surgery was invented for that in the 1930s. And all of the people who are affected, they were treated, and they were then observed how they behave. They needed months of hand holding and getting them around the touching walls, seeing the colors and so on. So they can recognize and say, the cloth is red, what is red? But needed months, not just standing up to run to his father's house, jubilant that I have been cured. And things like that. So you hear, ask the people. But on demand, no. Not responding to your demand. The one who demands usually is the one who is not serious. Because you can only demand, possibly, when you study the guy, watch him from far away, and then say, I saw that, I'm not 100% persuaded because this point and this point. Can you clarify that? You may, for this case, find an answer if your objection is reasonable. Say, no, we'll not believe until you break this mountain into pieces or turn it in gold or have rivers running for you on your place. No, it is not like that. It doesn't work this way. It comes from the divine on his choice when he wants that. In the case of Musa, for example, the stick and the right hand, that's given by Allah for him in the conversation in Mount Sinai. That's it. And also, additionally, which mentioned in one or two places in the Quran, you can squeeze your hand. If you feel fear, you do, and your fear is calm. That's given to Allah. He did not ask for it. And then later, the Pharaoh, where the Pharaoh was refusing, he was shown the miracle And because Musa introduced himself, I have also evidence for man. I said, show me. And he showed him, this is magic. Let's collect all magicians. You know that. And then later on, all miracles came as punishment for them. And every time said, oh, how we believe you will let you, the people go with you. And then they renege on their promise, etc. So it was never you demand and you get it. No, that's not like that. That's not like that. So the same here. So I'm a warner. I brought you that. So say, what miracle he brought at that moment of this? There was not the moon splitting yet. Most it was after that. When was that then? That must be before the moon splitting, which was seen by many of them, and they verified it by trouble and so on. We discussed that once casually in another occasion. Okay, leave that at the moment. We will get inshallah to it there. And but the fact of illiteracy and the fact of that he is not capable of poetry should have been sufficient evidence for anyone who's reasonable and savvy. But they refuse to be. Because they're from the beginning, they're out for rejection. Next ayah.
أولم يكفهم أن أنزلنا عليك الكتاب
أولم يكفي
أولم يكفهم أن أنزلنا عليك الكتاب يتلى عليهم إن في ذلك لرحمة وذكرى لقوم يؤمنون. Why is it not enough for them that we have bestowed this divine writ on thee from on high, to be conveyed by thee to them? For verily in its is manifested our grace and a reminder to people who will believe.
Exactly.
Translation. Isn't it enough for them that we inspired you to recite the book to them? There is mercy in this and a reminder for the believing people.
Exactly. We mentioned that. That's why he's illiterate, and how an illiterate person could ever formulate something was challenging and deep and thoughtful like that. A simple man from Mecca who has nothing done except maybe a bit of shepherd, being a shepherd in his life for a few pennies, and then later on chosen by Khadija as a husband. Before that, people praised his trustworthiness and so on. So she sent him because at the time it was quite difficult for women to travel. So he was her agent and did the travel to Sham and came back and gave her very exact accounting. And she was quite surprised. And then she made with other ladies the trick to approach him and tell him, what's out Khadija? Are you not interested? You know, women would do that. And then he approached her and he succeeded in marrying her. And then after that, he did some business trip for her. And he was well established. That's all of it. Nothing. Yeah, a life which was completely eventless. If you go to any seerah, barely any news before his prophethood. Normal life. Obviously honest, was respected, many other smaller stories of importance, but nothing which indicate this one will come with such a breakthrough like the Quran. You like it, you don't like it, it's a breakthrough. It's a shock. It's a shock for everyone. So is that not enough for them? Especially with the nature of the Quran and so on? Clearly it should be. It's as miraculous as cutting a mountain into pieces, even more. Because this adds to the reason, and you can repeat it, you can go back and say, I conclude this is amazing. Was I right? Maybe I was deceived. Let me check it again. Splitting of the mountain, you see it, was gone. After some months and years, you doubt if you have seen it, probably was it a dream. And the other people start to, this guy is lying who telling us that has happened. They can very well say that. After generation, it's gone completely. Oh, this is ancient past. And then you get so-called critical and hypercritical historians say, this is all invented. People invent that later and go get it back to an imaginary, possibly an imaginary person who never existed. Like the hypocritical schools saying about Isa and about Muhammad. They are not just right about Isa. There are many gaps there which you could try to sneak through, but you will not be able to go for Isa. Leave alone. For Muhammad, it's just a joke. you make yourself a mockery of sane human beings if you do that. Because the book is here in our hand, and you can trace it back. Generation after generation, get all the oldest possible copies, all the way to old parchment which has been found, and carbon dating them. Then you get stuck. There's no escape. So a book with these characteristics from a man of that characteristic is unescapable. It's a better evidence than splitting a mountain or turning a rock into a block of gold. That will be used, cut, distributed, and then 200 years later, maybe much earlier, we tell anybody, say, were you present there? No, I got it from my parents. The grandparents said, these old guys, they were lying to you. They invented a person there, or there was a person there, insignificant, and they want to blow him out of proportion. Very difficult to answer such question about material miracles. In time past, now we have these records. Even now, even if you have a video for that nowadays, you will go through great pain to verify that it's not an AI, a fake video made by AI. But a book, which is in hand, and you can review it again and again and again, and analysis, and generation after generation, there's no way you can get away from that. So is that not enough for them? It should be enough for them. Just asking for the stupid, useless miracles. Next ayah.
Next ayah. قل كفى بالله بيني وبينكم شهيدا يعلم ما في السماوات والأرض والذين آمنوا بالباطل وكفروا بالله أولئك هم الخاسرون. Say unto those who will not believe, God is witness enough between me and you. He knows all that is in the heavens and on earth, and they who are bent on believing in what is false and vain, and thus on denying God. It is they who shall be the losers.
Yeah.
Next translation. Say, God is sufficient witness between you and me. He knows what is in the heavens and earth. Those who believe in falsehood and deny God will be the losers.
Yeah. I don't think you need to comment. It's very clear. So I don't care about what you are saying. I have a witness for that, which is Allah. And you don't have any witness. If you believe He exists and He's witnessing what's going on, then that's great. If not, then you have to come to believe that first and start from that. And then you analyze what I have brought to you and which person I was before that. And then you come to the conclusion. So be also witness over yourself. And then otherwise you will be the loser one day. Next ayah.
ويستعجلونك بالعذاب ولولا أجل مسمى لجاءهم العذاب ولا يأتينهم بغتة وهم لا يشعرون. Now they challenge thee to hasten the coming upon them of God's chastisement, and indeed, had not a term been set for it by God, that suffering would already have come upon them. But indeed, it will most certainly come upon them of a sudden, and they will be taken unawares. Next translation. They dare you to hasten judgment against them. They would already have received the punishment had its time not already been set by God. But it will surely come to them suddenly when they least expect it.
Yeah. So this shows that these people are really having already made a decision based on whatever motivation, not a rational consideration to start with. Not if it would be rational consideration, let's say someone is an atheist and he's confronted by a prophet. If he's reasonable, a fair man, they say, this man, because usually atheism comes from people who say, we have never seen a God, not on a tree, not in the mountains. So that's just a people's imagination. Maybe because they're fearing the dark, maybe, modern, even though they say that. Developed in the jungle, everything is fearful. They develop these fears and ideas. We don't see it, it's not there, most likely. No, it was I have a definite proof for that. In that case, someone like that, if you meet someone like that messenger, and he's reasonable fellow, he will say, but I don't believe there's a God. How can I say that? Then the messenger will educate him. Did you create yourself? Did you create heaven and earth? For example, the Quran will educate Muhammad and the people about that. Or look at this, look at that. How is this formed? How could this shape have emerged? And so on. If over the people who appreciate engineering and so on, arguing from the design and so on, he will argue with him. But if the guy is rejecting that, what comes, this will undermine our power, like for the people of Pharaoh, they recognize this is the truth. There is no escape. They have seen it with the magician. That's فجحدوا بها. Public will say, this is all magic, all BS. No, we're not going to accept. They were certain inside their heart it is true. Why? They want to keep the power, because if we believe these two guys form a slave nation, then all our glory and long history at the time, maybe the pharaohs were for 1,500 years at least, the dominant force in Egypt. Yeah, they were defeated once by the Hyksos, but 1,500 years of glory and pyramids and all of these things. And then we follow two men whose nation are slave nation. Means we acknowledge that we are like anybody else. We're the superior. We're not the good people. Like so the videos of Joe Kiriaki. The man is obsessed with it. We are the good people, the other one the bad one. Then we're like anybody else, at least. We have the good and bad. The others also have the good and bad. That's it. How can we give that up? There's no way we can give that up. No, we're going to accept. So then, but challenge him with it. And then if he refuses to bring miracles, say, okay, we conclude that you are a liar. We challenge you, bring the divine punishment you are promising. And he also respected him. It doesn't work this way either. Punishment would have come if were it not for a definite postponement decided for this universe. And it will come. And it comes suddenly. It may come for certain people by their death when they die, and the angel receive them with whips of fire. That's the beginning of punishment. And then it's too late to do anything. Or it comes for a community or a nation at the end by hurricane, or cyclone, like Ad, because hurricanes are called cyclone in the Indian Ocean, or by an earthquake, or by a fire from heaven, or by some kind of a shock, which nobody can figure out what kind of shock it is, like a people of Thamud, Sayha. Maybe a super electric discharge of unique type, which happens once in a few thousand years, or something like that. We don't know. And it comes in a moment where they were never expecting. And when it comes, there's no way you can get away. It's gone, finished. You're stuck. And it will come. And if it comes suddenly. It will not come on demand, no. It comes on divine design according to his timetable, not according to your wishes. Okay? But this shows that they are not serious, because anyone asking for the punishment, bring me the punishment you will. This is a challenge, a stupid challenge. Because any reasonable person say, let's assume this man is telling the truth, even if it's 0.5% of probability. And he's being sent by God. How can we ascertain that? By challenging him to bring the punishment? No. By asking more questions. We need more evidence. I'm a dull person. I have a dull brain. Show me more evidences. And he will show him. Quran has many evidences about resurrection and so on, the probability of it, how it works, about the divine power and so on, bit by bit. But not asking for the punishment. I'm absolutely certain I am right, and you're absolutely wrong. How can we conclude that without irrefutable evidence? Is most likely motivated by arrogance, almost certainly, not only likely, or keeping power, unwilling to give up positions, wealth, woman, whatever it is. And this is the majority of people who insist on kufr, is usually deceived by something like that. Ego, an enlarged ego, etc. So anyone challenging, bring me the punishment, it shows that he's a stubborn kafir. He's not willing to think, not willing to analyze, say, okay, you may be right, but the probability is very small. I'm not going to listen to you for the time being. I will see. I will think about what I'm doing. Or let me think about it. Or give me some time. Or maybe I will wait until they become more mature, if you're a young man. Like many young men who are committing sins when they know it's a sin. So I will repent. I'm still too young to be really committed. Only one thing you can't tell them, listen, you may die the next day or next moment. Crossing the street or a car, get out of the way, go over the boardwalk and smash you. You have to look seriously to repent now. For instance, this case of repentance. But here it's even worse, a case of fundamental belief that you give your life any meaning. So anyone challenging like that is you are not serious or having a psychological problem mostly, or mental problem. But usually it's more of a psychological type. Next
ayah. ويستعجلونك بالعذاب وإن جهنم لمحيطة بالكافرين. They challenge thee to hasten the coming of God's chastisement, but verily hell is bound to encompass all who deny the truth. Next translation, they dare you to hasten their punishment, but hell will surely encompass the unbelievers.
Actually, it's say as if it's encompassing now. Using the present, إن جهنم لمحيط بالكافرين, is actually surrounding them. And if they don't save themselves, when saving is possible and repentance is possible, they will end in it. They will open their eyes after death and they are there. So it is there already, it's around them. That's Jahannam is already there, but they don't see it, they don't feel it. So you don't need to accelerate, it is here. It's essentially here. So think seriously how you can get out of this being circumferenced by Jahannam. Only by finding the right way and thinking seriously about the matter instead of challenging, thinking, what can I know and how much I can prove or disprove. Next.
يوم يغشاهم العذاب من فوقهم ومن تحت أرجلهم ويقولوا ذوقوا ما كنتم تعملون. First translation. Encompass them on the day when suffering will overwhelm them from above them and from beneath their feet, whereupon he shall say, taste now the fruit of your own doings. Next translation. On the day when the punishment will overwhelm them from above and from beneath their feet, and he will say, taste the result of what you have done.
Absolutely. So that's the further explanation from Allah. In that case, then it has materialized, khalas, there is no way back and no way out. Next ayah.
Next ayah. يا عبادي الذين آمنوا إن أرضي واسعة فإياي فاعبدون. O you servants of mine who have attained to faith, behold, wide is mine earth, worship me and worship me then, me alone. Next translation, my worshippers who have believed, my earth is spacious, so worship only me. That's quite straightforward.
Yeah.
Next كل نفس ذائقة الموت ثم إلينا.
This is advising the viewer for immigration. The earth is wide. You are not necessarily stuck to this place. So if you cannot worship Allah alone, you are forced into shirk or something like that, and you can still travel and go, then go into my and the whole earth belongs to me. It's not to anybody else. At the time, it was relatively easy. There were no passport control and things like that. But even with passport controls, you have to find some way. If you are oppressed in some place so that you cannot at least fulfill your basic duties and you're forced to cook up and so on, only that. Then it's an obligation for you to escape if you can. If you are not oppressed and so on, that's not an obligation, but it's maybe highly desirable if you can go to a place of safety or a place where Muslims and Islam are dominant. But it's the details of Hijrah, which we discussed elsewhere. So, and then it concludes, so because the earth is wide, it's my earth. So don't think that because you are born in Mecca and you love the mountains and you have nostalgia, that's the only place where Allah can be worshipped. Because He can be worshipped, it should be worshipped everywhere. And that worship should be alone to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because worshipping Allah or enslaving yourself to Allah become invalid and useless if there's any mix of shirk in it. if there's any conjoining of your enslavement, anybody else with that, either for show off, then will annihilate the specific work or act you're doing for show off, or if it is not for show off but by creed, thinking someone else is also have divine attributes, then it annihilates all the ibadah. So you cannot say, I worship God and worship someone with him. Doesn't work this way. Then you are not worshiping Allah. You have annihilated the ibadah. It is completely negated. Yeah, carry on. كل نفس ذائقة الموت.
كل نفس ذائقة الموت ثم إليه ترجعون. Every human being is bound to taste death, and in the end, unto us all shall all be brought back. Next translation. Every soul will taste death, then you will be returned to us.
Yeah, and the other one is more general. Every soul, not only human beings, animals, and so on. Possibly angels, if we can talk about nafs in their case, whatever it is, later will taste death. Assuming the angel can be regarded as nafs and having soul and things like that. Most likely other type of design altogether. But, so, don't think that you can only survive and have a life and so on only in your home country. Just move on anywhere. But enslave yourself, worship only Allah. That's what counts. Anything else is secondary. It's a hardship, it's run against your feeling, because especially in time past, but also modern times, because of the borders and so on, in time past, you cannot imagine yourself living in another place and domain without your tribe, without your family helping you and supporting you and so on. But this is only just imagination, because there is also life and there may be opportunity. Obviously, we'll go to a place which you expect some security to be available, like which is, so this is coming at the first immigration to Habasha, which was only advisable, not obligatory, because it's not a domain of Islam. But you can get some protection. And from the news about that, or from Wahi himself, said, there's a king in which nobody suffers injustice in his domain. So go there. You will be protected. And that's exactly what has happened. And not all of them went. Some stayed with the Prophet, some went. So this opportunity is available. So don't think your life will end if you leave your area of birth or where you have acquaintance and relatives. No. You can live in other places. Ardullahi wasi'a. The earth of Allah, which is not the earth of anybody. Although people think, for example, English will think, oh, this is our own country. It is not your country. It's Allah's country. And you have been allowed to live there, maybe for a long time now. But before that, there were other nations. You came there and maybe usurped or hated them. So don't play trick. Don't think you can cheat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with these claims. The same with the Arabs. Before that, who was there? We don't know. Yeah. Other nations, other tribes. Extinct Arabs, they call extinct Arabs. We don't know if they were speaking Arabic or whatever, other African language. No idea about these very ancient times, 20, 30 years. In Europe, the Neanderthals 40 years ago were roaming. Then the current humans, I don't know if they are from Adam or another type of humans, came and invaded them and brought them to extinction. So does Europe belong originally to the Tal, or maybe originate to the dinosaurs? This is all nonsense. It belongs only to Allah. And then generation come there and live there by Allah's permission, by creative permission. And most of the time also by legislative permission. So appreciate that and behave yourself. But unfortunately, nations and tribes and countries do not behave themselves. They don't appreciate that they themselves came there from elsewhere. Especially to the United States of America. 300 years ago, there were immigrants and fugitives from Europe. Our country, inshallah. It was not your country 300 years ago. And actually, the original owner have been annihilated unjustifiably and in a criminal way, in genocide. So better you shut up and look in yourself. The same applies to everyone, not only to the Americans, to the Arabs also. All this may be longer. No, that doesn't make any difference. Well, there's no difference if it's 3-4 generations or or the moment the number of generation reaches a certain level, then this past is forgotten and there is no documents available for ownership and or a country or a house. You rely on oral tradition. And how you know that you own this house? Because you're living there and you took it from your fathers and so on. And from great-grandfather. After that, it's obscure. The great-great-grandfather, did he build it? Or did he came and took it to someone else peacefully? Did he buy it? Did he absorb it? We don't know. Most of these details are dark history, and they will never be discussed by humans in a court of law. It's what is the current situation, and maximum they go 1 or 2 generations where we can trace and we have witnesses and possibly documents. Yes, in recent centuries, we have documentation and records and so on, which goes for hundreds up to 1,000 years. But even over 1,000 years, like for example, lease and the common law of England goes only for 999 because they got 1,000 as halas after history. So you can lease for 999 years, but no more. Because regarded, it's just cannot be proven. Nobody can trace anything that far. So they belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a philosophical point. I'm just stressing that casually. Next.
Next ayah, 1 second. Sorry, just 1 second. والذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات لنبوينهم من الجنة غرفا تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها نعم أجر الآملين. Whereupon, unto those who have attained to faith and wrought good deeds, we shall most certainly assign mansions in that paradise, through which running waters flow, therein to abide. How excellent a reward for those who labor. Next translation. To those who have believed and done righteous deeds, we will assign mansions in paradise through which rivers flow, wherein they will remain forever, an excellent reward for those who do good work.
Yeah, the second one is more accurate or more general because they're rivers, not rivers of water, or because it could be running wine, it could be running milk and shade, it could be running whatever, honey. All of these and other things which are not imaginable now will be coming in running, meaning coming in tubes, for example, not necessarily over rivers. This is also tubes are also called running, like rivers. So this is an excellent reward for those who attain faith and made good deeds. And this is possible everywhere, every place of the dunya. Your home country, the country you are born in and grow up, or any other place which you can get there or being accommodated. Yeah. Next ayah.
Next ayah. الذين صبروا وعلى ربهم يتوكلون. Those who are patient in adversity and in their sustainer place their trust. Next translation, who have been patient and who have put their trust in their Lord.
Yeah. And second one again, say patient without specifying is not only in adversity, patient in or persisting or enduring or keeping not caving in or collapsing, both in adversity, but also in the battlefield if a fight is required, legitimate fight is required, and also in keeping the commandments, because this needs patience and endurance, sometimes difficult, and also in avoiding sins as well. So there's a very step. This is, you have to be patient in avoiding the prohibitions. You have to be patient in fulfilling the commandments, being enduring and persistent, and you have to be patient in adversities, and especially in a battlefield, if it's a fight legitimate, obviously. If it's not legitimate, it should not be there in the first place. But if it's legitimate or you believe sincerely, according to the best of your judgment and situation, that's the place to be now, dictated by necessity, then you have to endure, and you have to control your fear, and you have to control your, and most humans are fearful of death and so on. You have to control that. You have to control that. That's with patience in the battlefield. That's when the confrontation is happening. Otherwise, you should not be in that confrontation if it's not a legitimate confrontation, or if it's forced on you, things like that. And those who trust on their Lord. This is who are these? The one mentioned before. These are who believed and made good deeds, and they will be, if they are really true believers, they will have a good share of patience. Obviously, people don't have the same level of patience. Some people are very patient and very persistent and capable of confronting hardship and combat and loads of obligation and so on, and other less. But as much as you can within your ability, you not ask more than your ability. And trust in Allah is absolute. There's no limitation. You have to put your absolute trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He is the complete controller and master of the universe. Whatever the devil tells you otherwise, this is all satanic. He has a complete control of the universe. And if you think He's not interfering in your behalf at the moment, that's because of certain universal situation in the universe and judgment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for you trusting on Him, there is an enormous reward which should be granted in due time. That's by alone itself is worthy of reward, more than what you wish for. For example, you are imprisoned by tyrants, and you pray and supplicate for help to be released, and you don't get released. And you're getting better reward than being released, and higher rank than being released. So that's, and if you are released, you are still being giving what you wanted, and also extra reward because of your supplication and enslaving yourself and submitting yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you are win in every direction. You get what you asked for, or you don't get it, you are a winner. You will not be a loser ever if you trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Next.
Okay, next ayah. وكأي من دابة لا تحمل رزقها الله يرزقها وإياكم وهو السميع العليم. And how many a living creature is there that takes no thought of its own sustenance, the while God provides for it as He provides for you, since He alone is all-hearing, all-knowing. Next translation. How many a creature gives no thought to their own sustenance, but God provides for them and you. He is the all-hearing, the all-knowing.
Yeah. And this is also to comfort those who are contemplating to do hijrah. Will have no source of income, will be like abandoned, will be, no. Look at the animals. They don't have any storage, they don't have fridges, they have nothing. They go in the morning looking for example, birds, looking for fruits and for worms and so on, and they will get, according to what Allah has designed in the universe, get their fair share, and they are provider. Who is the provider? Who fashion the system so that produces that in a balanced way, especially in a balanced environment, especially in animals and so on. The imbalances happen usually by human mischiefs on earth. Otherwise, it's nicely balanced. The same for you. You are being provided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't think you are providing for yourself. This is a self-deception. And Allah is all hearing and all seeing. So don't hesitate from hijrah because I'll be cut from my source and from my homeland where I have some real estate, or I have some plantation or orchards and so on. I'll be there essentially abundant. Does not mean that you don't prepare to get some money ahead, to take money with you, that you take the necessary precautions, but don't make the lack of that a reason for you not to immigrate, where immigration is either obligatory or recommended, so that you can devote yourself to, enslave yourself to Allah alone and nobody else. Next ayah.
Next ayah. وَلَئِنْ سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَسَخَّرَ الشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ لَيَقُولُنَّ اللَّهُ فَأَنَّى يُؤْفَكُونَ. And thus, it is with most people, if thou ask them, who is it that has created the heavens and the earth and made the sun and the moon subservient to his laws, to his laws, they will surely answer, God. How perverted then are their minds.
Yeah.
Next translation. If you ask them who created the heavens and the earth and made the sun and the moon subservient to his laws, they will say, God. Then why do you lie about it?
So this is one of the ayahs of the لَإِنْ سَأَلْتَهُمْ about 10 لَإِنْ سَأَلْتَهُم in 7 contexts. And this is one which Ibn Taymiyyah took, without deep reading and connected to the context and the others, to say that the Qurayshi believe that they have Tawheed Rububiyyah, Tawheed of the creation. First of all, the name is wrong. It's not Rububiyyah, this creativity who created heavens and earth. And only half of the Rububiyyah is there, which is in Sakhara, made the Shams al-Qamar subservient to his laws so they can serve the people. That's creative control, not legislative, not normative commands, by his command. And he thought that Quraysh did not have things in Rububiyyah, which is a mistake, because even if they admit that, and not all of them will admit that, let's say those who admit that, and addressing some of them at least, but let's say even if all of them, it does not mean that they don't believe that he created and they just abdicated. And some of them may create, yeah, he is really who created and so on. No other creator is there, but he has divine offsprings from his own being. Or that he created heaven and earth and he lets the sun and moon manage them according to his law, but there are creatures like the jinn and so on who can rebel and run away from him. And this is another shirk. So all of that did not come in his mind to us to think this. He thinks the ayah covers all of that. No, the ayah does not say he's the only one and no other management or creation of the universe happen without his permission, whether it's the direct or indirect action. So the shallow reading may lead someone into this fiction called Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. The details of that, because discussion is relatively lengthy, and all the counter arguments showing that it's a fallacy, beside the historic arguments showing clearly that Quraysh had shirk in Rububiyyah and shirk in the divine essence, which is well established in the Quran also everywhere. And all the contexts are discussed in the chapter, that's in the Arabic version, where the chapters mean something different than the English translation, in the book of Tawheed. When we talk about all the parts, we talk about shirk al-Arab, the shirk of the Arabs. And all these ayahs are mentioned one by one with the full context and discussed one by one, and showing it doesn't imply what Ibn Taymiyyah said about Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, that the Qurayshi have Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, which is a fallacy, and secondly, that this can be summarized under Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. It cannot. It's something else. It contains other elements, and it misses many other issues which the Mushrikeen have in Quraysh. And also in many places, it is in response to those who reject the resurrection, say it's not possible. But if you admit that he's the one who created heavens and earth and managed the sun and moon, how can you even dare thinking that he's unable to resurrect the dead? Yeah, for example. So it's an answer to those. So you are contradicting yourself. Lying and contradicting yourself. That's the purpose of the ayah. It's not to establish Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, or that Quraysh have only shirk Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, but not al-Rububiyyah. And both names also obviously shows by Islamic are false. But this is for the book of Tawheed to go into find details. But it's very clear. It's very clear. That's going way out of the context of the Nas. Next ayah. But if you want more detail, go to the book of Tawheed, chapter 5 in Arabic. In the chapter 5, the Shirk wal-Arab, there's a lengthy discussion with and all the other similar ones in the Quran. I remember they have the 10 in 7 contexts. This is one of them, one of the 10. Carry on.
Okay. الله يبسط الرزق لمن يشاء من عباده ويقدر له إن الله بكل شيء عليم. God grants abundant sustenance or gives it in scant measure to whichever he wills of his creatures, for behold, God has full knowledge of everything. Next translation. God gives plenty to anyone he wants and gives little to anyone he wants. God knows everything.
Yeah. So this is very clear. And it shows the context here is the context of immigrating and feeling that you cannot find a provision. You are away from your home country, or you have roots, you may have some possessions, you may have some friendly relatives who help and so on, and you're going into a foreign country, nobody is there, you are like an outcast, and how can you survive there? Allah says, Allah is the one who provides, either in plenty or in scant, little amount, whatever depending about the situation, about his universal control of the universe, because he's comprehensive in knowledge about what's going on. And what reason for the scanting or for the excessive giving.
Okay.
Next.
Can we look for a convenient place to stop soon? It's coming up to 3:45 and need to finish at 5.
Let's say the next ayah, what is it? It may go to the stories of the prophets or something, or not yet.
ولئن سألتهم من خلق السماوات والأرض وسخر الشمس والقمر لا
We have
يقولون.
that
No, we already
already.
done that. Sorry. ولئن سألتهم من نزل من السماء ماء فأحياه به الأرض من بعد موتها لا يقولون الله قل الحمد لله بل أكثرهم لا يعقلون. And thus it is, if thou ask them, who is it that sends down water from the skies, giving life thereby to the earth after it had been lifeless? They will surely say, God. Say thou, since this is so, all praise is due to God alone, but most of them will not use their reason.
Yeah.
Next translation.
Carry on.
Next translation is, and if you ask them who sends down rain from the sky to give the life to the earth after it was dead, they would surely say, God. Say, praise be to God, but most of them do not think.
Most likely is the response to those who deny resurrection. If he does that and bring from the barren land, which is apparently dead, new life, we know there are seeds in that case, but who does that? They say Allah. So why you think that who is able to do that and manage the universe and so on and create the heaven and earth and bring water down and so on is not able to resurrect the dead, or he is the only one divine being, and there are sons and offsprings and so on who have for whom he have to take care and watch for their pleasure, or that there are other evil divine beings who are trying to undermine his work and inflict errors and so on in the universe, which do not exist, like the jinn and so on, or the evil forces and gods. Why do you believe that, despite you knowing that this is have these powers? How come that any other entity can have a comparable power? So it is again the same thing like the previous one. The same Ibn Taymiyyah error. He took that again. That's Quraysh. They don't have any problem with Rububiyyah. They have Tawheed Rububiyyah, but not Tawheed Uluhiyyah, which both are defined obscurely. So that book of Tawheed is very important to see. But the people do not use their reason. What they are not using a reason for? The issues before, the issues about rizq and about halal. So if you know that, then all the issues about rizq and provision and that earth belongs to Allah, all of it will become clear in your mind. And that you have to trust in God in every situation and supplicate to Him becomes clear in your mind. Even the supplication apparently does not seem to be responded to. You will not lose trust because you know that the response to the supplication is reward, fundamentally reward, not necessarily what you ask for. That's in the hand of Allah, depending upon what He is managing the whole wide, big universe. Next ayah. Let's see if there's a convenient stop.
وما هذه الحياة الدنيا إلا لهو ولعب وإن الدار الآخرة لهي
لدار الآخرة
وإن الدار الآخرة لهي الحيوان لو كانوا يعلمون.
Yeah.
So
Read this and then we stop here, I think.
Okay. We've only got a few hours left, but I think it's probably good. Okay. For if they did, they would know the life of this world is nothing but a passing delight and a play, whereas behold, the life in the hereafter is indeed the only true life, if they but knew this.
Yeah.
Next translation. The life of this world is only only diversion and amusement, whereas the real life is in the hereafter, if they only knew.
You say a few ayahs remaining at the end of the surah?
Yeah.
Okay. And we can finish it, inshallah.
Okay. All right. Far away.
Yeah. Carry on.
So, that was a translation. I just gave it.
Yeah. The meaning is clear. Yeah. So this life is just a part. It will pass away. It's almost like a play compared to the eternal life, which is the real life. And word you say is hayawan, which is used also for the living beings, like animals and so on. It's called hayawan. I usually use, people will be surprised sometimes we have news to this. It's only one place, the Quran, hayawan meaning the real life in that case. So it has two meanings. One is that, and there's the other living beings. That's most like a conventional, fashioned by thinker and philosopher after the coming down of the Quran. Because the Quran uses for the hayawan, dabba, dawab, the beings which are alive and have weight. So if they will move, you feel their, meaning they are subject to gravitation, the bodily beings, not the spiritual beings like angel and so on. Dabba, okay? Usually in opposite to the angels. Okay.
Okay, right. We'll start the question answers now then. We'll have to keep it a little bit briefer. Okay, so if anyone wants to unmute, you can. Otherwise, I'll go to very few questions that have been submitted previously. Some may be longer, which we can postpone for another date. Okay, anyone wants to raise their hand to ask, feel free. Otherwise, first question. What is happening in Iraq regards to Muqtada al-Sadr and apparently all the militias being disarmed?
I have no idea. I'm not following that to any great extent. Muqtada al-Sadr is wavering right and left and center. He doesn't seem to be seeing what's going on. And he doesn't seem to be able, as far as I know, how to confront the current government, because he is definitely not pro-Iran. And he felt let down and fought by them, because he is representing more the Shia of Iraq, and he thinks the real marja'iyya, the real reference is in Najaf, not in and hence he thinks the Iranians have hijacked this. And this is sectarian issues. We do not need to be bothered very much about it, actually. But this is, if you're stuck in a certain sect and you're not going to the fundamentals, then you are in problem. He seems to be, because when he speaks about Abu Bakr and Umar, so he make a dua for them and things like that. So he's not a classical Rafidi who reject Abu Bakr, Umar, and so on. And I don't think this is any focus. When he was cooperating with some jihadi in early phases of the occupation of Iraq, and then obviously Iran came in and cooperated with the. This is one of the biggest blunder in their history. This one cooperated with the government, which is appointed by the Americans, most likely due to so-called sectarian and so-called strategic consideration. Essentially, the same way secular governments and atheists think, not what Islamic governance should be, but also in the Shia sect of all types, either Iraqi style or Iranian style, and so on. I'm not including Zaidi. These are another category put together. The concepts of hostility and allegiance and belonging are quite confused. They seem to be understanding it only being alleged and belonging to Ali ibn Abi Talib and the Imams after him. It doesn't have other implications, which is a very deficient reading of the Quran, catastrophic reading, as a matter of fact. And this, they didn't seem to be seeing very much of a problem of accepting or at least tolerating this government. Doesn't mean they should have been fighting. No, they cannot fight against them. The Americans there is like a beast. No. But you don't acknowledge them officially. And all the arguments they brought, all of them are wrong. But obviously, the one who made the decision at that time was really the Pahlavi wing, not and the revolutionary wing was essentially deactivated because the supreme leader is essentially a compromiser. So what the American call moderate. But they call anyone who was willing to compromise a moderate. It was a compromiser, so he let it go. He did not really stand firmly against that. So they entered, and then they had clashes, Muqtada al-Sadr and so on. And now he's between all fronts. Ultimately, if he doesn't make really sharp decisions and take leadership staunchly and strongly, I don't know if he has the knowledge and the courage to do it. What this means, confront the current government, which is an American agent. Because that's locally where you are. Instead of being busy with Iran, focus on that. Or at the moment, because Iran has been, I hope that they are recognizing the catastrophic mistakes with this, they may be more cooperating now and clear the past. But that seems to be very remote. For that, you need to get out of this cocoon of sectarianism and so on, and become more savvy and take all elements and discussion into consideration, and do not get stuck in a certain point and never leave there. How painful it may be, you have sometimes to let go. You let go. You don't go into the revenge and counter-revenge and so on forever. One time you have to get up. You have to gloss over things. But it's very complex, unfortunately. But what's going on now, detail, and his group is disarmed. I don't know if they're disarmed or they gave up their arms. But that's a problem with the Iraq situation. It's very confusing and very problematic. And now we see clearly that it's Harish, as bad as Daesh. They're also extremists, and they're bloodshedder, and they're criminals. And they are under the control of the government. The government is using them as a tool. They are part of the Iraqi system, which is nothing more than under the shoes of the Americans, until now at least. Not the other groups. I mean, Al-Hashd al-Sha'bi, the official Hashd al-Sha'bi, that belongs to the government. And they use them as an effective tool to eliminate and kill and destroy any opponents. Very regretful situation. We discussed that long ago in the early of the century. Ad nauseam. I discussed the mistakes of al-Zarqawi and al-Qaeda and what happened there. The so-called Islamic State of Iraq, later morphing into Islamic State of Iraq and Sham, Daesh.
Okay, so if you're
so it's very painful. But at the moment, no, I stopped following that very much because there's nothing fundamental in the behavior of Muqtada al-Sadr after that until very recently, or Iran or any forces in Iraq. So they'll be turning around themselves until ultimately someone take the lead and kick the Americans completely out. And it's becoming feasible now, but it has to be done.
Okay, next question. Are there any scholarly on the issue of music that you recommend?
Yeah, Ibn Hazm is having some good points of view. There's a book called actually he's Wahhabi in Saudi Arabia, about the ruling about singing and dancing and so on in Islam. It's a big volume. Obviously, the way his argumentation is not really structured the way we structure it, but he did some good aspect there, and some he attacks certain hadith on grounds which are not the correct one, and many other things like that.
And what's that book's name?
I don't know. It's called حكم الرقص الغناء والرقص في Islam, the ruling of singing and dancing in Islam, something like that.
That Ibn Hazm book, I believe Renaissance Foundation.
No, Ibn Hazm doesn't have anything. It's scattered in Muhalla and other places.
I think Khalid and the guys, they translated something on it.
Some of it, and it's available in. Put the link of that and yeah.
Okay, I'll put it in the Telegram.
Hazm is relatively good, but it's not comprehensive. We have a comprehensive everything here, essentially. As I said, I did not want to go into these petty issues and make them bigger than they should be.
Okay. Anyone else got any questions? Okay, because there are a couple of much longer questions, but I want to save those for the monthly because it's going to take a long time to go through some of them. Okay, let me see if anyone else is in the chat. Anyone wants in the chat to unmute?
There's any smaller ones, or the long ones are one question, or maybe
no. There's this one which requires reading an entire article. Another one requires it's basically going to be a bit more involved.
Okay. If you can put it in Enterprise with the article itself,
okay,
so I can listen to it. Just putting the link will not help me. I will not do anything with it. But put it and the transcript of it after that.
Okay, no problems. I'll do that offline. There's also a PDF somebody wanted me to send over to you.
It doesn't help. I need it text or something which I can have my reader reading it.
Okay, all right. I'll have to do that another time then. Okay, all right. No one else is asking any questions. Let's kick off the Palestine update. I'll stop the stream now. for those people who are listening, you can join the Zoom to listen, or you're gonna have to go onto Rumble. It takes a couple of days. Could be tonight, could be a couple of days from now. We'll put it onto the Rumble. All the links are in description. Although someone just put in a last question. If someone has bad mouth breath because of some issues with his throat, is that a ground for not going to the masjid?
I don't think so, but before going, then you just gargle.
Now, some people can have a congenitive issue or something.
Yeah, it's very well possible to gargle and brush. No. But if he cannot control it, then he should avoid going there. But this way, you will disconnect from the masjid and so on. And the only way, I think, is just because we have now modern many means, for example, gargle and so on. And also, Sheikh also, there are many videos about bad breath, how to combat it and so on. You just not take it as a qadar or as a decided already in eternity or something like that. There are many ways. See what is the reason for the original reason. And
face mask
in the teeth, it may be a sign of certain diseases. It's good to check that. And
face mask?
It is coming from deep from the stomach, because stomach is empty and then start becoming acidic. And then before going to the mosque, you have maybe a glass of Sheikh, which juice is the best for that. And this way it suppresses it, at least for going for the masjid. I advise anything preventing you from going to the masjid, you should overcome as much as you can.
Cool. Okay, let's go into the